At 6'0" and 170 pounds, Allen Iverson was the shortest and lightest MVP in league history. But even more than his MVP, 11 All-Star selections, and 4 scoring titles, AI was a cultural icon. He changed the way athletes looked, how they talked, and how the point guard position was played. The answer was your favorite player's favorite player. And even though he was perpetually late and didn't like to practice,
we talking about practice.
In 2001, he produced one of the most magical finals runs in NBA history. In this video, we'll talk about Iverson's prime years, how desperate the Sixers were before his arrival, and how AI reached basketball immortality with the worst offensive team ever. And it all started while Allen Iverson was still in high school, when the Sixers started to suck. Since the 1992 season and Charles Barkley's trade to Phoenix, the Philadelphia 76ers became one of the worst teams in the NBA. But after they won just 18 games in 1996, there was hope on the horizon when the Sixers won the draft lottery and the #1 overall pick. The 1996 draft was the best class ever, producing 10 All-Stars and 5 Hall of Famers. But the Sixers' choice was easy, and they went for a sure thing. Despite some questions about his character and him being the smallest and the lightest player ever selected first overall, there were not that many questions about the answer's game. Because from the first moment he stepped on an NBA floor, there was no doubt this guy was the fastest player the league had ever seen. Even as a 155-pound rookie, Iverson put fear in people's hearts because nobody could stay in front of him. Iverson could change directions with the ball on a string, turn on the jets, and burn whoever, whenever. Plus, despite his small stature, Iverson had a long wingspan. He was wiry, strong, and fearless. If you tried to beat him up, he'd get up every single time and go at you 100 miles an hour again and again. In his NBA debut, AI scored 30 points, which was the 6th highest scoring game ever for an NBA rookie. Allen also broke Wilt Chamberlain's rookie record of 3 straight games with at least 40 points, doing so in 5 straight games, including a 50-point effort in Cleveland against the Cavaliers, who had the second-best defense in the NBA that season. He thus became the second youngest player ever to reach the 50-point plateau. But the most memorable moment of his rookie season came against his idol, Michael Jordan.
Iverson has Jordan. The crowd is into it. Allen shakes free.
Iverson finished that game against Chicago with 37 points on 15 for 23 shooting, completely outshining Jordan, who finished with 24 points on 9 for 24 shooting. In his rookie year, AI led the Sixers with 23.5 points, which was the 6th best scoring average in the NBA. He also ranked 11th in assists with 7.5 dimes per game. And even though he shot just 41% from the field, he made 155 three-pointers, which was near the top of the league. Iverson won Rookie of the Year. However, his 76ers sucked, and they were glued to the bottom of the standings. And because they barely improved from the previous year, Coach Johnny Davis got fired. And in his place came a coach that would soon become synonymous with Allen Iverson, Larry Brown. As a player, Brown was a 3-time assists leader in the ABA, and as a coach, he was a disciplinarian who believed in structure and being 20 minutes early to everything. And when he got to Philadelphia, there was Iverson, a ball hog who didn't like to pass the ball, a guy who believed coaches couldn't teach him much, and who was perpetually late for everything. It was a match made in hell, and it didn't take long for the coach and the superstar to clash. If you come down and jack up a bad shot and nobody else touches the ball, what good have you done? Those 4 guys, they don't want to just run, play defense, and set screens. It gets old for them real fast. But Iverson was a hothead and didn't like Brown's authoritarian style. He did not stay after practice to work on his game. If there was a shoot-around, he showed up when it started and left as soon as it was over, if he even showed up at all. When the other Sixers hit the gym, Iverson would just lay on the bench press machine, pretending to be lifting. Or he'd hide in the bathroom and eat junk food. Still, with more experience and Brown's efforts, Iverson improved. As a rookie, he led the NBA in turnovers with 4.4 per game, and in his sophomore season, he cut that to just 3.1. His shooting efficiency went up from 41% to 46%, and his decision-making improved, as Brown didn't want the Sixers to be a one-man show. If I had a mismatch last year, I could take it. I can't do that as much this year. That gets a little frustrating, Iverson said of his lack of freedom on offense. But despite Iverson scoring less than the year before, the Sixers improved, even though they didn't make the playoffs. However, in 1999, AI couldn't be reined in anymore, not even by Brown. The coach started to play Iverson as a shooting guard to get him off the ball, but the result wasn't more cutting to the basket and off-ball movement to make it easier for the offense. Sir, AI started gunning, leading the NBA in field goal attempts and averaging nearly as many turnovers as assists. The ball was still in AI's hands for the majority of the time, and thanks to an insane usage rate, he led the NBA in scoring with 26.8 points per game. But most importantly, thanks to their top 5 defense, the Sixers were finally successful with their first winning season in 8 years. In the playoffs, AI led the Sixers past Orlando in the first round with 28 points, 6 assists, and 4 steals per game. But in the next round, they immediately got swept by the Pacers. For the 1999-2000 NBA season, AI continued on the same trajectory. He took 25 shots per game, which was nearly a third of all the Sixers' attempts. He averaged 28 points, which was second best in the league, and he made his first All-Star team. The Sixers again won their first round playoff matchup, but they once again lost in the second round to the Pacers. On the surface, Iverson had a successful year. He was a fan favorite and was becoming a cultural icon, with nearly half the NBA copying his hairstyle, getting tattoos, and wearing baggy clothes. However, inside the locker room, it was horrible. Iverson missed half of the team's practice sessions, and for the ones that he did show up to, he was late. And Larry Brown, who was setting up his clocks 20 minutes early just so he was never late for anything, was fed up. Brown publicly criticized the behavior of a star player.
I wonder what your relationship would be with any employee that you might have who doesn't choose to come to work,
and suspended him for 1 game, to which Iverson went berserk. You say this team's a family when it's convenient, but then you go talk about me in the newspapers. If it's really family, then you keep it in the family. You don't disrespect me like that. After this incident, Larry Brown demanded from the ownership that Iverson had to be traded or that he himself would quit.
In Philadelphia, coach Larry Brown and guard Allen Iverson have been going at it again. Iverson was miffed that he was benched Saturday night for the final 20 minutes of an eventual loss to Detroit.
And Iverson shared the same sentiment about his coach, wanting him gone. He believed that he was a superstar and that the Sixers would get rid of Brown to keep him. But then, a shock. During the offseason, the Sixers decided to trade Iverson and were openly shopping him across the league. Finally, in late July of 2000, a 4-team, 10-player deal was made between the Pistons, Hornets, Lakers, and Sixers that would have sent Iverson and center Matt Geiger to Detroit. However, at the last moment, Matt Geiger refused to waive his trade kicker bonus, which messed up the finances of such a complicated trade, and everything fell through. But this near trade finally sobered up Allen Iverson. He realized that he was not above the team, that he was acting like a prima donna, and that if he didn't clean up his act, the Sixers would get rid of him as soon as they got the chance. From that point on, I promised myself that I would never give anyone the ammo to use against me. I looked back at the practices I missed. It was ridiculous. I missed so many and I was late for so many. I gave them the ammo. Before the training camp started, Iverson had a meeting with Larry Brown where he apologized for his behavior. I'm going to change. I'm ready to be a leader. I want to be a captain. I'm going to be on time. I want to have the kind of relationship with you that Magic Johnson had with Pat Riley and Michael Jordan had with Phil Jackson. Brown was elated because that's all he wanted too. And when the training camp started, Iverson kept his word. He didn't miss a single day of training camp and not a single weightlifting session. When the training camp started, AI reported at 155 pounds, with the goal to bump that to 170 for the first game of the regular season. When that first game came, AI weighed in at 172 pounds and was deadlier than ever. The Sixers started the season with 10 wins in a row, and there was a noticeable change in Iverson's game and body language. AI started to dish the ball more out of double teams. He looked engaged during timeouts and hugged his coach after games. This new dynamic between Brown and Iverson culminated during the All-Star game, when Allen's fourth quarter explosion carried the East to victory. Since the 76ers had the number 1 seed, Brown coached the game. And after Iverson was presented the All-Star game MVP, his first words were,
"Where's my coach? Where's my coach? Coach Brown. Is he around?"
Before the trade deadline, the Sixers traded Tony Kukoc and Theo Ratcliffe for Dikembe Mutombo, who won Defensive Player of the Year that season. The Sixers secured the number 1 seed in the East, and for the first time since their championship year in 1983, it looked like they could go all the way. After they defeated the Pacers in the first round of the playoffs, Iverson was named the league MVP, with averages of 31 points, 4.5 assists, and 2.5 steals. On top of a Defensive Player of the Year and the MVP, the Sixers also had a 6th Man of the Year in Aaron McKie. However, in the second round, another problem awaited, and the clash with the high-flying superstar Vince Carter. Vince and AI were the most attractive players in the NBA, and their matchup was one of the most exciting duels in NBA history. In Game 1 in Philly, both Iverson and Carter went over 35 points, but Toronto won. In Game 2, AI scored 54 to even the series, and Carter immediately countered with 50 of his own in Game 3. The Sixers evened the series in the fourth game, and in Game 5, Iverson eclipsed 50 again, finishing with 52 points, 7 assists, and 4 steals to give Philadelphia a 3-2 series lead. But in Toronto, Carter played out of his mind again, scoring 39 points to extend the series and force a Game 7. On the day of the deciding game, Carter had a graduation ceremony in North Carolina, and he decided to participate. After 2 flights that day, he made it to Philadelphia, but he was exhausted and played an awful game, including a final second miss that would send the Sixers to the conference finals. AI had a horrible shooting night, but he did finish with a career-high 16 assists, and doing everything in his power to lead Philly to victory. And in the conference finals, they faced another NBA legend, Ray Allen and his Milwaukee Bucks. Ray, Sam Cassell, and big dog Glenn Robinson looked like the better team at the beginning of the series. And after Game 2, it looked like the Sixers were doomed. The game was tied, but Allen Iverson injured his hip and was ruled out of Game 3. And without their best player, the Sixers had no chance against Milwaukee. But being as tough as he was, Iverson pushed through the pain and suited up for Game 4. And even though his hip contributed to an atrocious shooting performance from Iverson, 10 for 32 shooting, the Sixers somehow pulled through in a must-win game. And then, Game 5, Iverson had an even worse game, shooting 5 for 27 and scoring only 15 points. But he did have 9 rebounds and 8 assists, and the Sixers somehow eked out an 89-88 win. AI scoring came back for Game 6, and he finished with 46 points. The Sixers lost and were due for another Game 7. But when it was most important, Iverson played the best game of the series, finishing with 44 points and 7 assists to push the Sixers to the NBA Finals. After a decade of irrelevance and losing, the Sixers were on the brink of basketball immortality, reaching their first finals in 18 years. However, in the 2001 finals, there was a worst possible opponent. The Los Angeles Lakers, with Prime Shaq and Kobe, didn't lose a single game on their way to the finals. But in Game 1, Allen Iverson was destined to change that. In the first half, Iverson played like a madman, torching Kobe and Derek Fisher for 30 points. However, in the second half, Phil Jackson decided to put in Iverson's doppelganger, Ty Lue. Leading up to the finals, Lue barely played. However, he was the only player on the Lakers fast enough to keep up with AI, and he did a fantastic job, holding Iverson to just 3 points in the final stretch of regulation. But then came overtime. Iverson found his groove again, scoring 7 of the Sixers' 13 points, and his last shot became one of the greatest moments in NBA history. This deadly bucket was the epitome of Iverson's career. It showed the full detail of his talent and his deadly crossover, while the step over after he made the shot fully explained the cold-bloodedness of this 6-foot killer. Iverson rarely talked trash on the court, and he rarely even swore on the court. Even if he said something, it was a simple one-liner, more closer to Tim Duncan than to Kevin Garnett. Instead, he let his game do the talking. And in that Game 1 win against the Lakers, he reached basketball immortality. He finished with 48 points, 6 assists, and 5 steals, almost single-handedly defeating the team that was undefeated in the playoffs. It was the 6th highest scoring game in NBA Finals history. However, in the next 4 games, the Lakers proved their dominance and won the title, as nobody in the NBA could deal with Shaq. And even though Iverson lost, he became a people's champion and an NBA legend. The 76ers averaged 94.7 points per game that season. Allen Iverson averaged 31.4 of those, with none of his teammates averaging over 12 points. In fact, none of his teammates averaged more than 18 points per game at any point in their careers, and most never even averaged 15. Other than Iverson, the 2001 Sixers were the worst offensive team that ever reached the NBA Finals. And while it's not entirely wrong to say that Iverson was a ball hog, on this team, he absolutely had to be. He was the lone scorer on a defensive-minded team, which allowed his offensive talent to shine and shoot until the wheels fell off. And the wheels nearly did fall off. Iverson played through 9 different injuries during the 2001 NBA season, which is a testament to his resilience and fighting spirit. And yes, Allen Iverson won only 1 playoff series after 2001. Yes, he wasn't very efficient, especially by today's standards. And sure, he didn't like to practice. And the 2001 season was really the only season where he behaved like a professional and showed up on time. But as he said in that infamous press conference, maybe he didn't show up for practice. But come game time, this skinny little dude was willing to die on that court. And that's why he's still one of the most popular NBA players of all time. Thanks for watching Nonstop. If you like this one, there's plenty more where this came from. So click on this video next.